Part 60. The Liu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yoon. Chapter 591. Chapter 591. Sister An gives brother Joe enough sense of security. I am sincere to you. So I will not get too close to any male friend while you are away. I, Jongwanan, want to give Luzes who a sufficient sense of security. Although Jongwanan's expression was exaggerated when he spoke, it can be said very sincere. Luzes who looked at her helplessly, saying nothing but sighing. Don't sigh. Sister An, I'm telling the truth. Sister An gives brother Joe a sense of security, Jongwanan said with a tense expression and patted Luzes who's shoulder several times. Okay, Sister An. Luzes who felt a little humble at this moment. He has become like a younger brother. Who would believe it? Jongwanan nodded with satisfaction, held Luzes who's big palm tightly with both hands, and said, if you hang out with Sister An, if Sister An eats a mouthful of meat, brother Joe will drink a mouthful of leftover soup. Can you leave any soup? With Jongwanan's appetite, Luzes who doubted that she could have any leftover soup. Brother Joe didn't believe her and was temporarily autistic. After being autistic for more than 10 minutes, Jongwanan slowly ate the fruit and stared out the window for a while. Then she poked Luzes who and said in a lazy voice, Sister An wants to eat snacks. Luzes who understands. The snacks he chose last night because Jongwanan went to bed too early and didn't have time to eat them can be eaten now. He originally wanted to take it directly to Jongwanan, but after thinking about it, he felt it was inappropriate. After all, this is his sister An, how can he open it by himself? So he opened the packages one by one before delivering them to Jongwanan. Jongwanan looked at his performance and nodded with satisfaction, not bad, I drank 2 sips of soup. It's fine if I follow you and don't get beaten up and have no soup to drink, Luzes who said jokingly. Jongwanan rolled her eyes at him. I thought to myself, who are you looking down on? The two of them put their tablets up and found the TV series they were watching. Their favorite snacks were placed in front of them. During this period, Luzes who went downstairs to get something to drink. Life was very comfortable. It was almost time to eat and drink. Jongwanan burped and touched his round belly and said, it's done. It seems that we can't have lunch anymore. The meat and soup are all yours. Luzes who was just seeing what fascinated him. Hearing what Jongwanan said, he still complained, I don't believe you can still eat it. There will never be a time when you can't eat it. Can you stop speaking so bluntly? Jongwanan was not very happy. Although what Luzes who said was true, she did not deny this, but she was angry that Luzes who spoke too bluntly and did not imitate the male protagonists in TV dramas. The male protagonists in TV dramas always speak well, and the female protagonists never get angry because of a word from the male protagonists. Jongwanan also wants to be treated like the female protagonists. Jongwanan stretched out her hand and took a closer look at Luzes who's face. Then she shook her head helplessly and began to complain. Look at you, you only have the appearance of the male protagonist in the TV series, but your mouth, can you learn from the male protagonist when you speak? Listen to how nice other people speak. It was written by the screenwriter and arranged by the director. I don't have a team, Luzes who said. Talking to this kind of person just makes you want to make yourself angry to death. Jongwanan was speechless and turned to watch the TV series. She felt that the male protagonist in the TV series was better. Luzes who looked at Jongwanan staring at the tablet and knew that she was obsessed with the male protagonist. Luzes who snorted coldly, thinking that this is a woman, a fickle woman. Luzes who couldn't think of what he should say to make Jongwanan look at him with admiration. After thinking about it, he pushed the peeled pistachios in front of Jongwanan and said, eat more, you are too thin. Jongwanan picked up one and put it in her mouth, chewing it slowly. Although it sounded obedient, she felt that she was making progress. End of this chapter. The Liu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yoon. Chapter 592. Chapter 592. Aren't I here? Jongwon picked up one and put it in her mouth, chewing it slowly. Although it sounded obedient, she felt that she was making progress. Lunchtime was getting closer, and Tang Yu was woken up in a daze. After a good nap, I felt even hungrier, so I took a shower and went downstairs. The two people who loved watching TV series and eating snacks in a sweet and loving relationship were also shouted down. Lunch is ready, have you washed your hands? Lin 11 asked, looking at the two people who came down holding tablet computers with expressions of obsession. Because Jongwon was too addicted to the TV series, she was startled when she suddenly heard Lin 11's voice and didn't react. Her fear of the whole family was also tightly tugged at her heart. After hearing Lin 11's voice, Jongwon's feet slipped and she was about to fall down the stairs. Just when everyone was holding their breath and staring with big eyes, Luzes who was closest to her, quickly grabbed her arm with quick eyesight. The clothes pulled her back with a strong tug. Jongwon bumped back into Luzes who's arms. Although it hurt, it was much less painful than falling down the stairs. Fortunately, there was no danger, and the family breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately I didn't fall, otherwise I would have married a disfigured daughter-in-law, Luzes who teased her with a smile. She was teasing, but actually she wanted Jongwon not to be so scared. Jongwon was so frightened when she was about to fall down that her face didn't look very good even when Luzes who grabbed her back. Jongwon's legs were weak now. She ignored the looks of her old father and mother below and got into Luzes who's arms without saying a word and hugged his waist tightly. I will never walk again. Her voice sounded like she was about to cry. The bystanders were very frightened just now, let alone her who experienced it. Luzes who gently hugged her and whispered, "It's okay, don't be afraid, I'm here, right? Did it hurt you just now?" Jongwon raised her head and looked at him, and sure enough her eyes were a little sparkling. Huh, Luzes who looked puzzled. There was a thud when I was pulled into your arms just now. Did it hurt? Jongwon asked. Luzes who was stunned for a moment and felt it carefully. He shook his head, as if he didn't feel any pain. He didn't feel any pain if the little girl didn't hurt him. If the little girl hurt, he would feel double the pain. Okay, we're all fine, let's go down to eat, Mom and Dad are watching downstairs, Luzes who reminded in a low voice. Jongwon turned his head slightly and looked with his peripheral vision. Sure enough, there were 3 pairs of eyes looking at them below. Jongwon coughed twice and left Luzes who's arms. Her cheeks were slightly red. She turned off the tablet in her hand. She almost threw it away just now, but she had to protect it tightly. The two went downstairs side by side under the gaze of 3 pairs of eyes. As soon as they looked away, the 3 pairs of eyes looked away, and then walked towards the restaurant together. The aroma of food was wafting in the restaurant. Aunt Jean had already prepared the food and was waiting for them. Sit down and lunch begins. Jongwon was not hungry at all because she ate too many snacks before lunch, but she couldn't resist the temptation of a table of delicious food, so she couldn't help but pick up a few chopsticks. Eat less, you will feel uncomfortable soon, Luzes who reminded her in a low voice. He still remembered Jongwon's hospitalization before because of eating too much. Jongwon nodded, but she always listened with her left ear and the other, so she didn't listen. Although her stomach was not full, she still stuffed all kinds of delicious food into her mouth. Actually, it's no wonder she was there. Aunt Jean's craftsmanship was so good that she couldn't help it. She could drool a lot just by smelling it. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Lu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yoon. Chapter 593. Chapter 593, Feeling sorry for my son-in-law. Actually, it's no wonder she was there. Aunt Jean's craftsmanship was so good that she couldn't help it. She could drool a lot just by smelling it. Loses who knew how much she had just eaten and how much she ate. He looked at everyone was talking, and no one noticed the two children. So Loses who reached out and pressed Jongwonen's hand that was about to pick up the food, and then silently took the chopsticks away from her hand. Jongwonen was stunned. When he looked at Loses who, his smile gradually disappeared because he had stopped himself from eating. Loses who knew that she was going to be angry, so he quickly explained, if you continue to eat, you will feel uncomfortable. Then you will have stomach discomfort. Bear with it, and you will still have it at night, otherwise you will feel uncomfortable for a while and you will not be able to eat at night. Jongwonen understood, but he just couldn't help it. She pursed her lips in displeasure and thought for a moment before saying the word okay. Loses who did not return her chopsticks to her, but placed them with him. He said, let's watch TV first, otherwise, she would not be able to bear it after seeing it. Jongwonen nodded, stood up and walked away obediently. The three people had been talking and chatting just now and didn't notice the two of them. They were a little stunned when Jongwonen left suddenly. Have you bullied Anan? Lin 11, as a biological mother, was the first to question Loses who. Although Loses who had no choice but to explain, Anan is full. I'm afraid that if I stay here any longer, I'll have to eat too much. I saw you guys were chatting, so I left without disturbing you. That's it? Lulin answered, thoughtfully, and then said to Loses who, Anan is bored by herself. Stop eating and go and accompany her. To be honest, he wasn't full yet. But after thinking for a moment, Loses who felt that it was a wise choice to get up and leave. After all, he would definitely be disliked and complained by his biological parents if he were here alone. They were all merciless when Jongwonen was here, let alone absent, so Loses who filled some dishes and left. Looking at the departing figure, I always feel a little lonely. When Loses who walked away, Tang Yu finally couldn't help but speak. She said, isn't it not good for you to favor Anan and treat Xiaozhou like this? Lin 11 and Lu Lin waved their hands tacitly, indicating that it was nothing. He is eager to find Anan. We are looking for a way out for him, Lin 11 said. But he didn't even eat well. Tang Yu was still a little distressed. It's okay, he took some away, but he didn't have enough to serve himself, Lin 11 said. She was right, but she felt a little distressed. Have finished lunch. Aunt Jean was washing dishes, but her cell phone in her apron suddenly rang. After washing the dishes, she hurriedly wiped her hands and went to answer the phone. After a few words, Aunt Jean looked a little excited. She didn't know who the person on the other end of the phone was, but she must be a very important person. Aunt Jean put away the phone after a while. Lin 11, who was making a small cake on the side, raised his head and asked with a smile, is there any happy event? Aunt Jean was already trying her best to restrain herself, but it was still so obvious that Lin 11 could see it. Aunt Jean looked at Lin 11 with a smile and said, my son said the day before yesterday that he would not come back for the Mid-Autumn Festival. He just called to say he would come back. I haven't prepared anything yet. Lin 11 was also excited when he heard it. Really? Then go back quickly. I've given you leave. Come on, I'll call Laolu and ask him to come down and see you off. Yesterday, she gave Aunt Jean leave to go back, but Aunt Jean said that there was no one at home. She was originally going to spend the Mid-Autumn Festival here, but now it seems that she doesn't need it. End of this chapter. The Lu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yun. Chapter 594. Chapter 594, Sisters working together are not tired. Yesterday, she gave Aunt Jean leave to go back, but Aunt Jean said that there was no one at home. She was originally going to spend the Mid-Autumn Festival here, but now it seems that she doesn't need it. The Mid-Autumn Festival is still fun to spend with your family. Aunt Jean waved her hands repeatedly and said, "Don't bother Mr. Liu. My son will come to pick me up in a moment. I'll just go outside and wait. There is a gate control here, and her son's car cannot get in." Since this was the case, Lin 11 compromised. She was relieved that someone would come to pick up Aunt Jean anyway. "Then you can clean up and leave now. Leave me to clean the bowl. I'm free anyway." "No, what's the matter?" Lin 11 suddenly paused while speaking. She took a deep breath and sniffed the air vigorously. Aunt Jean also smelled it. She reacted and pointed to the small cake she had just made behind Lin 11, "It's cake batter." Lin 11 was extremely collapsed now. It took her half a day to make it. Although she couldn't guarantee whether it tasted good or not, she now knew that it tasted really bad. She tried her best to raise the corners of her lips and look like she was facing life well. She turned around and said to Aunt Jean, "Aunt Jean, go pack your things. Now I have time to wash the dishes." Of course Aunt Jean was embarrassed to ask the boss to wash the dishes, so she insisted on staying and washing them herself. Lin 11 didn't want to delay Aunt Jean's departure. She said unhappily, "Aunt Jean, all my cakes have been scrapped. I'm so bored now that I just want to play with water. Just let me wash the dishes." Aunt Jean didn't expect that Lin 11 would come up with such an excuse and was speechless for the time being. Seeing that Aunt Jean didn't say anything, Lin 11 took it as her acquiescence, so she walked over with a smile, put on her gloves, turned on the faucet and started washing the dishes. As soon as Aunt Jean came over to stop Lin 11, she stopped her first. She pretended to be serious and said, "Aunt Jean, if you don't let me wash, I will be very annoyed. I won't follow anything I say in the future, you said so." Aunt Jean knew she couldn't get involved, so she smiled helplessly. She had served many employers in her half-life, and none of them were as easy to get along with as this family. They had a lot of money but good people, very approachable, and the whole family was kind-hearted. She likes to get along with such people, there is no pressure. Aunt Jean had no choice but to go upstairs to clean up. When Lin 11 finished washing the dishes and came out, Aunt Jean also packed her things and was ready to leave. Lin 11 sent her to the door and then came back. Tang Yu happened to go downstairs when Lin 11 came back. Seeing that she had just come back from the door, he was a little confused and asked, "Are you out?" "Well, Aunt Jean went home to reunite with her son, so I sent her out," Lin 11 explained. Tang Yu nodded and asked about the cake made by Lin 11. Lin 11 smiled awkwardly and said, "I was just talking and forgot about it. It's bad. Anyway, I can't make anything good, so I'll save people." Compared with what she said to Aunt Jean in the kitchen just now, it seemed even more indifferent now. Tang Yu didn't know what to say for a while. He thought about it and there was no one to cook dinner tonight, so he volunteered, "I'll cook dinner tonight." "No, let's go out to eat." "You're too tired." Lin 11 felt a little distressed considering that she had just come back, fearing that her body wouldn't be able to bear it. Tang Yu shook his head, "It's okay, it's all agreed upon, and I've slept all morning, so I'm not tired for a long time. I'm just making dinner. Then, I can't make dark dishes during this Mid-Autumn Festival, so I'll start," Lin 11 said. Tang Yu nodded and said yes, it's not tiring for the sisters to work together. Zhang Wanan ate too much at lunch and now her stomach felt uncomfortable. Luzes who gave her medicine, but she still felt uncomfortable and kept moaning. Luzes who couldn't stand the fact that she was so uncomfortable, so he walked over and pulled her up from the bed and said, "If you feel uncomfortable, don't lie down. I'll take you downstairs for a walk." End of this chapter. The Liu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yun. Chapter 595. Chapter 595. Watch the moon together at night. Luzes who couldn't stand the fact that she was so uncomfortable, so he walked over and pulled her up from the bed and said, If you feel uncomfortable, don't lie down. I'll take you downstairs for a walk. Jongwon didn't want to go downstairs at first, but she remembered that she really should walk more now, and they hadn't walked together for a long time, so she agreed to go downstairs for a walk. It's just that she doesn't have much strength now, so she has been holding Luz's arm tightly with both hands since she got out of bed, like a pendant. Luz's supported her hard, and he suddenly felt that the little girl was not thin, but he had lost a lot of weight, because he felt that the little girl was a bit heavy, but he did not dare to say. The sky today is not bad, and the sky at night cannot be found anywhere. People say that the moon on the 15th day is 16 round, but Luz's has always felt that the moon on the 15th day is not bad, and it is round and bright. Let's watch the moon together at night, Luz's suddenly said. Although Jongwon was feeling very uncomfortable now, she didn't want to spoil Luz's happiness, so she nodded and said, "Okay, let's look at the sun first." Luz's smiled, "Then let's look at the sun first." Although they are looking at the sun, who dares to look directly at the sun? After seeing the white flowers in front of them, they just feel the warmth given by the sun. Maybe the walk had some effect. Jongwon felt that her stomach was not so uncomfortable for some reason, and her hands holding Luz's became a little looser. Luz's felt it, turned around and asked, "Are you feeling better?" Walking again. Good. Originally, Luz's thought he would have a lot to say during the walk, because after all, the two of them hadn't seen each other for such a long time, so it was normal for them to talk a lot when they met, and he always felt that they didn't talk enough last night. But in fact it was not what he thought. They didn't have much to say, they just talked a few words from time to time and spent the rest of the time walking around the garden. Silent, but Luz's felt that this was not bad. He doesn't choose. As long as he is with Jongwon, he is satisfied no matter what he does. Walking around and around, Jongwon gradually felt less uncomfortable. She let go of Luz's arm and jumped a few times in front of him. After feeling it, she felt that she was completely healed. Jongwon cheered and hugged Luz's "I don't feel uncomfortable anymore." There was uncontrollable happiness in her tone. Luz's smiled, thinking that this little thing could make her happy. It was so easy to be satisfied. Be obedient from now on and eat less. It will be difficult to digest if you eat too much, he said in a long-winded way. Jongwon knew that his nagging was for her own good. She rubbed her cheek against Luz's and said, "I know, I will be obedient from now on." "Be good, baby," Luz's said quietly, rubbing the back of her head as if coaxing a child. "It's like coaxing a child," Jongwon complained. "I used to coax you like this, and you also like it when I say it. You have grown up," Luz's sighed, pretending to be sad. Jongwon rubbed his face again. "I like it, and I still like it, but I like you more." "You can talk better than man," Luz's said. "I'll teach you." "I'll wait until you tell me later," Jongwon said matter-of-factly. Luz's smiled, thinking that he was dissing him for not being able to speak sweet words. He just had to learn hard and tell her specifically from now on, so that she would feel like she was living in a honeypot every moment. "Let's go back after 2 more rounds. I'm a little hungry," Jongwon said, feeling his stomach. Luz's sighed, "Don't eat when you are hungry, eat together at night, otherwise, you will feel uncomfortable after eating now and eating too much at night, and it will be even harder to digest at night." Jongwon thought so. She nodded, "I'll listen to you." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Lu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yoon. Chapter 596. Chapter 596. What kind of fairy are you? After a busy afternoon, the smell of fragrance wafts out of the kitchen. The dining table is slowly getting full, and meals are being served one after another. Zhang Wanan walked over because of the smell. When she walked over, she took a deep breath and thought that her mother's food would make her mouth water just by smelling it, let alone eating it. Luzes who couldn't stand her useless expression, so he tisk several times to show his contempt. You look down on people, don't you? Zhang Wanan looked at him with an unhappy expression. Luzes who glanced at her and then at his mother-in-law and biological mother who were delivering the food to the table. He shook his head and gave up. Zhang Wanan said she, thinking that he was so timid and dared to look down on her, and he didn't know who was looking down on whom. I'm going to help serve the food, Luzes who said, and walked towards the kitchen. Zhang Wanan also raised his legs to follow. I'll go too, standing here alone like an idler. No, 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 Dad is more like a loner, he is still sitting on the sofa watching TV, Luzes who complained. Lu Lin, who was sitting on the sofa watching TV, sneezed inexplicably. He touched his nose and thought he didn't have a cold, right? Zhang Wanan had never seen someone complain so much about his own father, and actually said that he was an idler. 4 people worked together to finish all the meals. Joe, do you think your Aunt Tang's cooking is good? Lin 11 asked Luzes who after serving the food, and winked at him to indicate it. Of course Luzes who knew what his mother meant, and it was nothing more than a signal to him to say yes, but even if his mother didn't give him a look, he would still know what to say. After all, the future mother-in-law cannot be offended, and she has to flatter her when it's time to flatter her. Okay, just now Anan was standing here and his mouth was watering just by smelling it, Luzes who said honestly. After saying that, he felt something was wrong because he felt a pair of eyes staring at him, so he cleverly added, me too, my mouth is watering. When Luzes who finished speaking, Zhang Wanan snorted coldly, thinking that this was the right thing to do. Why should he hurt her? He should be included in it. Tang Yu was embarrassed by the praise. She waved her hands and said, as long as you like it, go wash your hands and get ready to eat. When Zhang Wanan went to wash her hands, she lamented to Luzes who on the side, I feel like the pace today is so fast. It feels like I just finished eating. Isn't that right? You just ate a small piece of bread and you can't stop it, Luzes who complained ruthlessly. She really wants to give Luzes who a beating now, but her mother is here today, so beating Luzes who is not a wise choice. Endure. The family gathered together at the table again. It was getting dark outside. The moon should be fully visible soon. If nothing goes wrong tonight, it should be very bright. After the lesson learned at noon, Zhang Wanan finally restrained herself a little when eating. She knew that she should eat less without Luzes who's instructions. It was probably because the lesson she learned at noon was too painful. It's also good, long memory. Is tonight's meal okay? There are a few dishes that I have learned recently. I don't know how they taste, Tang Yu said. Everything is good except for the perm. Zhang Wanan's first comment was that she was a bit slurred. Tang Yu smiled and said, it's too hot. Eat it slowly. As soon as Tang Yu finished speaking, Luzes who brought the small bowl in front of him to Zhang Wanan with a wink. He had no use for this small bowl. The food was all prepared for Zhang Wanan. It should be almost cold. Zhang Wanan was moved when she saw the bowl in front of her that she liked to eat. I love you so much, Luzes who, what kind of fairy are you? End of this chapter. The Lu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yun. Chapter 597. Chapter 597, Be More Reserved. Zhang Wanan was moved when she saw the bowl in front of her that she liked to eat. I love you so much, Luzes who, what kind of fairy are you? Luzes who coughed awkwardly to cover up his embarrassment, and then reminded him in a low voice, be more reserved, your parents are here. Zhang Wanan looked over and saw that they were all looking at her with unclear eyes. Zhang Wanan instantly blushed and said oh in a low voice. The atmosphere at the dinner table instantly became awkward, and then Lu Lin couldn't help laughing. Everyone laughed too, and the awkward atmosphere disappeared in an instant and became lively again. I will feel relieved when I leave in, and to Xiaozhou Tang Yu whispered while holding back a smile as he approached Lin 11. Lin 11 smiled and nodded, thinking that it would be good to rest assured. She used to be worried that her son would not be able to find a wife because of his temper and personality, but now she no longer has to worry. Moreover, his son's temper and character have been improved a lot by Zhang Wanan. This is probably the power of love. I think it will be a shame for Anan to marry our son in the future. Lu Lin couldn't help but complain about his son. I also think that we can just be nicer to Anan in the future and make up for it more so that Anan cannot suffer, Lin 11 replied. Their voices were neither loud nor quiet, but only the three of them could hear them. After hearing this, Tang Yu said, I think Anan will be very lucky to marry Xiaozhou in the future. It's not a loss. Moreover, you have been good enough to her. I feel it is a bit unfair to Xiaozhou. I thought about it carefully and I will treat Xiaozhou well in the future. Point. The three people looked at each other as they spoke and then burst into laughter. Zhang Wanan and Lu Zizhu, who were eating seriously opposite, were frightened by their devilish laughter. They wanted to know what those three people said, and they didn't know whether it was something reliable or unreliable. But based on their understanding of these adults, they shouldn't have anything reliable to say. You, what did you say? You look so happy, Zhang Wanan asked doubtfully. Say it, let's all be happy together. Lu Zizhu was also confused. The three people stopped laughing and looked at the two of them. Lin 11 shook his head and said, it's nothing. It means you two look like a couple. Lu Lin said, nonsense. They didn't dare to tell the truth. If Lu Zizhu knew that they were complaining about him, he would definitely get into trouble again, and he might get sulky and ignore them. Yes, they look like husband and wife. Lin 11 and Tang Yu agreed in unison. Zhang Wanan believed it and even blushed. She looked at Lu Zizhu, but she couldn't see her face, but she felt that what these three people said should be right, and there must be a couple who are in love. Although Lu Zizhu felt that what they said was right, he knew that what they just talked about must not be about whether husband and wife are in love or not, but it was about complaining or something like that. Otherwise, how could he laugh so happily? Lu Zizhu pretended to believe it, because even if he didn't believe it, what could he do? They will definitely not tell the truth. If not, just cooperate. It was a pleasant meal. The three people would come close to whisper from time to time and laugh after speaking. Lu Zizhu and Zhang Wanan were already numb. They didn't ask what they were laughing about and just pretended that they didn't exist. The two of them also gathered together to whisper, and laughed after speaking. Just make the other person angry like this. The dining table was full of laughter and laughter. It was a pleasant meal, but I was a little tired from laughing. After dinner, the three adults went to wash the dishes and tidy up the kitchen. Zhang Wanan and Lu Zizhu were more leisurely. They agreed to watch the moon at night during the day, so they took snacks and drinks to the balcony. It is said that the moon on the 15th day is 16 round, but looking at the moon tonight, it is not bad either. End of this chapter. The Lu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yun. Chapter 598. Chapter 598, We will get the certificate when you are old enough. Zhang Wanan lay on the railing and stared at the moon hanging in the sky in a daze. Lu Zizhu came closer, gently held her waist and stood aside to watch with her, so that it would look like a beautiful couple standing closely together to admire the moon. I'll leave tomorrow afternoon, Lu Zizhu said, very spoiling the atmosphere. Zhang Wanan was stunned for a moment, her smile gradually disappeared, and then she adjusted her mood and pretended to be indifferent and said, it's okay, we will spend many mid-autumn festivals together in the future. Lu Zizhu knew that she was sad, so he comforted her and said, there are still many festivals, such as Valentine's Day and so on. We can all spend them together. Can you buy me a lot of roses on Valentine's Day when I turn 18, under the night sky? Zhang Wanan's eyes looked particularly bright, full of anticipation. They haven't celebrated Valentine's Day yet. She wants to celebrate it once when she is 18, and then she can be treated like a heroine in a TV series. But she just said it casually. It's up to Loses who whether he wants to buy it or not, and whether he wants to buy it or not, it's up to him. Okay, I'll buy you a lot and give them to you when the time comes, Loses who vowed. Jongwon nodded, turned around, hugged Loses who and buried her head in his chest, so that she could feel extremely at ease. Loses who lowered his head and kissed the top of her hair gently and said, I am many years older than you. When you are old enough, I will be old enough. When you are old enough, can we go get the certificate? He was afraid that the little girl would run away if it took longer. Jongwon knew that he was talking about the marriage certificate, the little red notebook. Having that little red notebook would make her feel at ease, and she wanted it too. With that, you won't run away, right? Jongwon raised her head and asked him. You won't run without me, Loses who said. Then you'd better take it, it's an extra layer of protection, take it. Jongwon slapped Loses who's heart domineeringly. Loses who felt that Jongwon was about to pass the moment, but he had to hold on, otherwise it would be bad to be a widow at such a young age. Loses who used force to tighten the circle around Jongwon, as if he was afraid that she would escape. We will get it when you are old enough, Loses who said again in Jongwon's ear in a low voice. Jongwon couldn't help but tighten her arms around Loses who. She nodded again. She was going to be with Loses who for the rest of her life anyway. Jongwon was probably a piglet. After seeing enough of the moon, she fell down on Loses who's shoulder, and soon fell asleep again. Fortunately, Loses who kept supporting her, otherwise she would have been the one to fall. Loses who put to the bed and took a shower himself, then lay down on the side and hugged the beauty and fell asleep peacefully. He will leave tomorrow. I don't know how long it will take to live such a good life, so I must cherish it. Have a good night's sleep. No one called them the next day, so the two rarely hugged each other and slept in. Because they got up late, they missed breakfast time. Tang Yu said that he would cook it for them, but the two refused. They thought it would be okay if they skipped a meal, and seeing that lunch was coming soon at the current time, they might as well use the time now to hang out for a while, because Loses who should pack up and leave soon after lunch. Jongwon felt that everything was like a dream. Time passed too fast. She was reluctant to let Loses who go, but she had no choice. This time the three adults were very discerning and knew that the two of them would not have much time together, so they did not bother them and stayed far away. Actually, they weren't too tired of it. They just hugged each other and watched the TV series on the sofa, episode by episode. Time just slipped away bit by bit, but they couldn't stop time. Good time always passes quickly. The kitchen began to smell fragrant. After smelling the fragrance, Jongwon stretched out her hand to poke Loses who, our time will be shortened again. It's lunchtime, and we won't be apart for long. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Liu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yoon. Chapter 599. Chapter 599. Ask Sister An to send you to school. It's lunchtime, and we won't be apart for long. Of course Loses who knew that. After thinking about it, he could only comfort him and said, after I go back, I will still contact you every day to share what I did during the day, and I will try my best to find time to come back every week, or once every 2 weeks. Jongwon nuzzled into his arms and whispered the word good. Come over for dinner, kids, Lulin shouted in the restaurant. The two people responded lazily and walked towards the restaurant. Do you still have more money? If it's not enough, Daddy will transfer some to you, Lulin asked Loses who after sitting down. You have a lot of private money again, Loses who said mischievously, and when he mentioned the word private money, He deliberately pronounced it a little harder. What are you talking about? Do you want love? This is the pocket money your mother just gave me yesterday. Lu Lin finished speaking in a panic and then put a piece of meat into Lin 11's bowl attentively. Yes. Nutrition, eat more, don't listen to this silly boy's nonsense. Lin 11 glared at him and said, give all the pocket money I just gave you to your son. What about me? Lu Lin was completely dumbfounded. He shouldn't have asked Lu Zizhu if he still had a lot of money. Spending private money, Lin 11 said crisply, then stood up and sat on the chair opposite Lu Lin. Lu Zizhu now feels that his father's eyes are going to kill him. Alas, I don't know if what he just said is right. It should be quite right because he has extra money, which he can give to Zhang Wanan for her to buy and eat with. After dinner, Lu Zizhu went upstairs to pack his things. He didn't bring back many things, but he took away a lot. His mother gave him new clothes, and Zhang Wanan gave him a lot of snacks, which he had to pack and take away. Do you want me to help you clean up? Zhang Wanan asked, lying on the bed with her short legs fluttering and her chin held up. Lu Zizhu took one look at her and thought that it would be better if she was as carefree as she was. He could just pack the luggage by himself. Maybe taking Zhang Wanan with him would make things messy and slower. It would be better not to take this little devil with him. So Lu Zizhu refused directly. No, just watch it. Your little white hands are so white and tender that you shouldn't pack the suitcase. Your stuff is poisonous. Why are your hands fine? Aren't your hands white and tender? It shouldn't be. Zhang Wanan muttered to herself, and even picked up her hands to compare with Lu Zizhu. Lu Zizhu was speechless, thinking that sometimes this mentally retarded child looked normal, but sometimes he was nothing more than that, stupid. 10 minutes later, Lu Zizhu packed up his things. However, within 10 minutes, Zhang Wanan was already drowsy and had no energy at all. Lu Zizhu thought, didn't they get up very late? Why is this little pig so sleepy again? Anan is gone. Lu Zizhu woke her up softly. Zhang Wanan looked at Lu Zizhu in a daze and stretched out her hand to act rogue, but when she thought that Lu Zizhu still had to carry the luggage and couldn't hug her, she obediently put down her hand and jumped out of bed. Let's go, Xiao Zhuzi, let sister and take you to school. Zhang Wanan walked in front very domineeringly, even walking as if she didn't recognize her relatives. Lu Zizhu shook his head helplessly and dragged his suitcase to follow, thinking that this little girl was pretending to be relaxed again. She clearly couldn't bear to leave him. What might be done? This is life, it will get better in the future. The two of them went downstairs. When Zhang Wanan saw the three people who had been waiting downstairs, they immediately stopped walking at a pace that they didn't recognize and changed to walking normally. Fortunately, they didn't notice. However, Lu Zizhu, who was walking behind, found Zhang Wanan's appearance really funny. Let's go, little bastard, Lu Lin said angrily as he took Lu Zizhu's suitcase, as if he was still angry at Lu Zizhu for betraying him. End of this chapter. The Lu family's wife is so sweet. Author, Yun. Chapter 600. Chapter 600. The black-hearted little cotton-padded jacket. Lu Zizhu smiled apologetically and pulled Zhang Wanan up to the back. Are you happy? Lu Zizhu asked. Do you think I should be happy? Zhang Wanan looked at Lu Zizhu like a fool and asked. It seems that it shouldn't be used. Straight man. You deserve it. Lu Lin, who was walking at the front, heard their conversation and gloated about his son. Lu Zizhu originally wanted to pity him, but he didn't want to do it now. Mom, there is private money in the leftmost book on the third floor of the bookshelf in my dad's study. He told me personally. Please go and take a look when you have time. Really? Lin 11 deliberately dragged out his voice and looked at Lu Lin. Lu Lin shook his head in panic. He always felt that his breath was stuck in his heart, as if he was about to spit out blood. Don't keep cheating on your father like this. Zhang Wanan felt that Lu Lin was a little pitiful. I gave you pocket money, Dad just gave it to you last night, you can use it to buy some delicious food, Lu Zizhu said. Zhang Wanan instantly beamed, showing off the look of a little money crazy person. She smiled and approached Lu Zizhu and whispered, "It's okay to cheat him appropriately." Lu Zizhu nodded and looked at Lu Lin. He didn't hear it. If he had, he would have vomited blood. He certainly didn't expect that one day Little Cotton Jacket would encourage Little Cotton Pants to trick him. When getting on the bus, Lu Zizhu was the last one to get in, but Lu Lin, who acted as the driver, got on the bus even later. He waited for Lu Zizhu to get on the bus last and kicked him to make him remember. Lu Zizhu had already noticed it. He smiled cunningly and opened his mouth to call Lin 11. Lu Lin also saw what he was going to do. He immediately turned around with a dark face, opened the driver's door and got in the car. A gentleman's revenge is not too late in 10 years, not less than this time and a half. The family sent Lu Zizhu to the airport. They sent him to school last time, and they sent him here this time. Zhang Wanan held Lu Zizhu's hand reluctantly, and Lu Zizhu didn't let go either, but the time was coming and he had to leave. "I'll be back next week when I have time," Lu Zizhu coaxed. "You said the same thing last time," Zhang Wanan said. "It was military training that time and I really didn't have time. If nothing happens next week, I will definitely make time to come back and accompany you," Lu Zizhu continued. Zhang Wanan thought for a while, nodded, let go of Lu Zizhu's hand, and said, "Eat well and don't mess around. Rest assured." Lu Zizhu said goodbye to everyone and walked away with his suitcase. He didn't dare to look back, because he was afraid he didn't want to leave. When Lu Zizhu disappeared completely, the group returned home. "Anan, don't be sad. Dad will take you to buy something delicious," Lu Lin said with a smile after getting in the car. He was going to take his daughter to the supermarket to see if there was anything he wanted to eat. Zhang Wanan has been looking out the window since she got in the car. After hearing what Lu Lin said, she turned back to look at Lu Lin in the mirror and said, "Dad, do you still have money? Let's not go, your pocket money has been stolen by Zizhu even though it's all with her now." Speaking the truth, Lu Lin smiled dryly and erased the route to the supermarket he had just planned in his mind, thinking that he might as well go home directly. "When you get home, take the initiative to hand over the money secretly hidden in the study," Lin 11 said coldly. Suddenly he wanted to take a long detour. He wanted to go home later so that he could use the money to stay longer. Why was he so stupid that he told Lu Zizhu in the first place? This is a cheating thing. Yes, my wife is right. In fact, it is not my personal money, but my future dowry for Anan. Lu Lin started to talk nonsense. "Dad, don't use me as a cover," Zhang Wanan exposed him ruthlessly. "You black-hearted little cotton-padded jacket," Lu Lin said through gritted teeth. Zhang Wanan stuck out her tongue playfully, lay down in Tang Yu's arms and said, "Mom, I'll close my eyes and rest for a while." End of this chapter.